I feel like it's been a while since we've done a proper tutorial here. So today I've got a 2-for-1. Yeah, that's right. We're gonna have 2 tutorials in one video. And we're building this. That's coming up in this video. Everybody, welcome back. My name is Alex, and if this is your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel where we do NativeScript tips, tricks, and tutorials. And make sure you hit the little bell icon next to the subscribe button so you get notified when new tutorials like this one come out. So today we're building an animated battery using nothing but whatever comes with NativeScript. We're going to use NativeScript views and NativeScript CSS. So that's going to be the first step, is how do we build this battery using NativeScript views and CSS? And then, can I have a frame? Okay, sure. Here you go. As I was saying, we'll create a battery that is not just an image, but a completely dynamic component that you can set to the current battery status. By the way, I also created a video on this channel on how to actually obtain the real battery status of your device using NativeScript. If you haven't seen that, check that video out. So after we build the battery in CSS, then we're gonna... Can I have another frame? Excuse me, folks. Okay, here. Take another frame. Thanks. You good? Sorry about that, folks. All right, after we are done with building the battery, we're going to animate it. But we will use a brand new animation technique that I've never shown on this channel before. And the reason I haven't showed it is because it's a brand new animation function that's just been added in NativeScript 6.5. And it's called... Hey, I'd like another frame, please. All right, now you're really starting to push my buttons. Okay, here's another frame. Can I just finish this, please? Here you go. Sorry, I just wanted a frame. No need to apologize. Just stop interrupting, okay? Sorry about that, folks. Some people just don't know when to stop. Where was I? Oh yeah, we will animate the battery's percentage and its color. And we'll use a new API called requestAnimationFrame. Huh. requestAnimationFrame. Oh, now I get it. I see what you did there. Very clever, very clever. Can I have a frame? Cancel animation frame. Ah! Then we'll see something that has never been possible before in NativeScript animation. Pausing and resuming animation. Yes, this is gonna be a good one to watch, so watch it till the end. Here we go, folks. Here is our demo running on iOS and on Android. And if I tap go, you can see the animation happening on each one. And if I tap pause, you can see that the animation pauses. And this is pretty cool because not only do we see a new type of animation in this tutorial, we're gonna also see how to build this battery display that changes color based on how full the battery is. And we're gonna be able to pause and resume our animation. So if I tap go again, our animation picks right back up where it left off. We're gonna start this by going into main page, and I'm actually going to first create the battery, and then in part 2 we're gonna animate it. Don't worry, part 2 is still part of this video. I just want to split this up so that people that are interested in the CSS part and the building out the UI part can watch that, and people that are interested in the requestAnimationFrame, that's gonna be the second part of this video coming up in just a little bit. Let's build out the UI first. I'm gonna take out the action bar. I'm gonna take out the stack layout. Now we're just down to the bare bones page. Now, I'm going to use the grid layout component to create the layout for this battery. Let's give it a class called wrapper. Now, I wanna split up the battery into a couple of layers. We see it as just one image, but it's really made out of a few different layers. There is the outer layer, which is gonna be a label. I'm going to use labels here, but really you can use a custom component. You can wrap this whole battery up in a custom component if you wanted to, but I'm just going to use plain old NativeScript out of the box labels because they're easy to style. I'm going to give this a class of outer and an ID of outer. Now, the reason I'm giving it IDs and classes is because Classes I'm going to use in CSS to style things. I like to use classes for that and not IDs, even though you could use IDs. It's more reusable if you use classes. And I'm going to give this an ID because I'm going to access this in code later when I finally do my animation. So that's going to be outer. Now, one more thing I want to mention here is that we're going to stack all these labels one on top of another. Whatever is listed later as a child of the grid layout is going to be on top of the previous ones. So for example, I'm going to add another one called inner here with a class of inner. And this label, the inner one, is going to be on top of the outer one. And that's because we're inside of a grid layout, and that's how grid layout is going to stack things if you don't specify rows and columns. Let's go ahead and save this. By the way, these labels don't have any text in them, so they're not going to be shown here at all. So we need to add some styling to them in order to actually see anything. Let's open up app.css. Oh boy, we have a lot of stuff in here already. I'm going to just delete all that and create the outer class. And let's also create the inner class. Now, the outer class is going to be the outer edge of the battery. So that needs to have a background color. Let's give it green. Of course, you can style these whatever you want. And let's give it a height of 100 and a width of 200. You know what? While we're building this out, I'm going to give us a little bit more space to work with so we can see the simulator while we're building it out. Okay, so that's what we have now, a little green brick. Let's round it up a little bit by giving it a border radius of 20. Okay, so now our brick has rounded corners. Awesome. Let's go and work on the inner side now. Now, inner is going to pretty much be the same. Let's give it a background color of green. The height is going to be different here. The height is going to be 70 because we want the inner one to be inside of the outer one. So it's going to be smaller and a width of 210. This one's going to be bigger in width. So this is going to be the little protrusion that the batteries have. And that's why it's actually a little bit wider than that other one. And let's give it a border radius of 20. I'm just going to copy that one and save this. So let's take a look what this looks like now. Okay, now you can see that we have protrusion on both sides. Really just want it to stick out of one side. How do we do that? Well, I'm going to set the margin left on the outer battery to 0. And I'm going to set margin left on the inner battery to 30. Okay, so that's how we get the little protrusion there. This pretty much provides the shape of our battery. Now we just need to fill in the inside. So we want to make sure that we have a little space in there, kind of like creating a border, 10 units in width on all sides. And we're going to do this by layering even more items here. Let's create more labels. We're going to need 2 more labels. I'm going to copy these 2 and paste them here. One is going to be outer front and outer front. Actually, we don't need to access these in code, so I'm going to just go ahead and give them a class, and that's it. That's all we're going to have. No ID. And then inner front for this one. So let's create these classes, outer front and inner front. By the way, you can copy both of these at the same time by holding down Alt and Shift and then dragging across these 2 words. I'm going to do a copy, and I'm going to paste these 2 right here. I can also do Alt to put a cursor at the front of that on each line and put a period in front of each one of them at the same time. Outer front is going to have a background color of white because that's the background of the page. But it doesn't matter what the background of the page is. It could be anything. The inside of the battery is going to be white. All right, the height is going to be 80 because our outer height is 100 and we want the border to be 10. So 100 minus 80 divided by 2 is 10. So that's height 80. Width is going to follow the same formula. Instead of 200, it's going to be 180. Border radius is going to be a little different. So if we set border radius to 20, it's not going to look quite as good. Let me save everything and show you. See, it looks very weird. Now we have that box inside, but the outer border radius should be bigger than the inner border radius because, well, it's a tighter curve on the inside of the battery. So the border radius on the inside is going to be 10. That number works very well for this. And there it is. It gives that simulated border a little bit more consistency and width. And even though it looks good, I'm still going to give this a margin just to be consistent. A margin left of 0. Okay, now let's work on the inner front. To do that, I'm just going to copy all of the outer front, paste it here inside the inner front style, and just change the values. So the height is going to be 70 minus 20, which is 50. And the width is going to be 210 minus 20, which is 190. Let's save this, and you'll see that it looks weird. So we just need to shift that inside of the battery out a little bit by giving it a margin left. And we're gonna use 30 here, just like we did for the inner part, to move it the same distance away from the left side. Okay, there's our battery. Doing well so far. We have 4 labels here, and we have some CSS. We're gonna do one more label, and this one is gonna be the filler. So this is gonna be showing the actual percentage of the battery. I'm gonna give this an ID of filler and a class of filler. This one is gonna be animated, so we do need that ID. Let's go to the CSS and add the filler class. Now this color is gonna change, but we're gonna start out with green because we wanna show it full first. I'm optimistic here about our battery. Don't wanna give anybody battery anxiety. Height is gonna be 70. Now it's 70 because, well, we want it to be inside of that border and we don't want it to be touching the edges. So outer front is 80. We want it to be smaller than that. That's 70. And width is gonna be smaller than the outer front. We're gonna make that 170. Border radius is gonna be the same as the outer front, which is 10. Let's take a look at that so far. And there it is. Okay, so this simulates the full battery. What happens if we have half a battery? So instead of 170, let's say we have 85 here. Okay, I'm gonna switch to 85. The color should probably not be green. The color should probably be, oh my God, it popped up. That's not always easy to do. Okay, I'm gonna set the color to right about there, somewhere between red and green. Now you'll see there's a little bit of a weirdness going on there where the filler is in the middle, and we don't want that. So what do we do about that? Well, there's another property we can set, and it's a horizontal align property. And this is not in CSS, so that's why Visual Studio Code is not going to recognize it as such. Horizontal align is actually a NativeScript view property, but you can still use it in CSS. If you were to use this in your view right on the label instead of in CSS, you would actually say horizontal alignment, okay, equals left. So it'll be a little bit different. Let's go ahead and save that. We've got the horizontal line set to left. Uh-oh, what happened there? It escaped us. Well, this is something we need to use a margin for to correct. So I'm gonna set margin left to 35. But we also don't have our wrapper defined. So let's do that. We need to limit how far this whole battery is gonna be taking up horizontally, how much space horizontally. So we need to limit that, and I'm gonna set the limit to be 240. Remember that we have a wrapper class on the whole thing, that's the grid layout. Once I do that, you'll see that this filler sits nicely in the right place. So this simulates that we actually have that filler positioned correctly for any part of the animation that we wanna do. Let's say we wanted to go even lower and we wanted to do width of 10 there, where our battery is almost dead, and that looks pretty good. All right, so let's get the width back out to its fullest, 170, and the color back to green to make sure that that still works fine. And indeed it does. Okay, so that's our battery, folks. Now, this is part 2, where we actually take this battery and start animating it. And we're gonna use requestAnimationFrame, which is something newly available, recently available in NativeScript, and that's pretty cool. We're gonna open up the code behind for the main page and work with that. Now, in the code behind, we have a navigating to function that's already defined for us, and it fires when we navigate to the page. There is no navigation going on, of course, here, but the navigating to event gets fired when the initial page gets loaded. So we want to go ahead and grab a couple of these things here before we start animating them. I want to grab the filler that we're going to be animating. So that's going to be our target. That's what we're going to actually animate. And we're going to use page get view by ID here. That's going to get us that view. So the IDs are these things. I'm going to get filler, and I'm going to cast all these to views because view is the parent class of a label. So you can use multiple different kinds of views with this code and it'll still work. So that's our target. Then I want to get the inner and the outer ones as well. So let's copy this code 2 more times, inner, and get view by ID inner, and finally outer, get view by ID outer. Okay, So I got those, but I do need something else here. I actually need some buttons so I can start the animation. So I'm gonna actually use this grid, and I'm gonna separate this out into 2 rows. And the first row is gonna be where my battery is. So I'm gonna give that a space of 200, and the rest of the space can just be star, which will just take up the rest of the space. So anytime you don't specify an ID, that's automatically going to be put in row 0. So I'm going to create my buttons down here inside a stack layout, and I'm going to put this stack layout in row 1. So let's specify row 1 here, and I want my buttons to be positioned horizontally. So I'm going to specify orientation horizontal. Now there's going to be 2 buttons. One is going to say go. This is to start the animation. And let's give it a class. This is one of those built-in classes. I'm going to say primary, and I'm going to give it a tap handler and say on tap go. This is the function that'll fire in that code behind file when I tap the button. Okay, so let's take a look at this. And my app crashed. Well, it looks like it's not liking my orientation to be horizontal. There's no such thing as horizontal. There's horizontal. Let's try that one. And horizontal works. Okay, so there's my go button right there. I don't think that something like that should crash the app. It should just keep working, but ignore that value if it's not correct. Anyway, text for the second button is going to be pause. We want to be able to pause the animation. We're still going to use the same class, and I'll say on tap pause. Okay, let's implement these 2 functions in the code behind. So over here, I'm going to export function on tap go, and another function that says on tap pause. Now, in order to be able to pause our animation, I want to keep track of the state of the current animation, whether it's playing or not. So I'm going to say is playing equals false initially. And when I say go, I want to say is playing is true. Well, actually, I want to first check. So I want to say if not playing, then play and set is playing to true. Okay, that makes much better sense. And on tap pause, it's going to be the opposite. So we're going to say, I'm going to copy that and paste it here. If is playing, and only then we're going to set is playing to false. So if you tap go multiple times, it's just going to work the first time. If you tap pause multiple times, it's just going to work the first time. Now comes the fun part. This is where we're going to start animating, and we're going to use requestAnimationFrame. Now, if you've seen my tutorials here before, you've seen that I use a lot of JavaScript-based animations here, where we use, underneath the hood, we set timeout and set interval to do that, and we update the properties. If you haven't seen my videos on that, check them out. Start with this video I'm going to post up here in the corner that teaches you how to animate anything in JavaScript and NativeScript. And this applies to NativeScript or this applies to web. Basically, it'll just teach you JavaScript animation. Now, requestAnimationFrame has been developed specifically to address the problem of CPU thrashing and just constantly updating at random times. requestAnimationFrame is going to give you closer timing on the web. Now, in NativeScript, requestAnimationFrame still uses JavaScript animations behind the scenes. It doesn't do anything fancy other than that, but it's a shim that's actually useful because it works the same way it does on the web. And you can also pause by using cancelAnimationFrame, which is part of the window object. So requestAnimationFrame is going to be global here. And if I start typing it, you can see it's available right there. If you're using anything earlier than NativeScript 6, you'll still have this available because it's going to be in your libraries for the DOM. So lib.dom.d.ts, you can see that there. And that's coming from Node Module's TypeScript libraries. But it won't work unless it's implemented in NativeScript as a global function, and that happens in version 6.5 and later. We're going to call requestAnimationFrame, which is going to take in a parameter that's callback. This parameter is going to be a function that's going to perform our animation. For each frame that we want to animate, we're going to execute this function. I'm going to call this function update width. And requestAnimationFrame also returns to us an ID, which is a number. So I'm going to call that one requestAnimationFrame ID, ref ID. Up here at the top, I'm going to create a new variable called RAFID, and that's going to be of type number. And now we need this function. So I'm going to create a new function. It's not going to be exported. It's just going to be a local function called updateWidth. Now, this requestAnimationFrame actually passes us a parameter here called a timestamp. Sometimes you might need that to find out what time of the animation we're at, but we don't need that in our case because ours is going to be infinitely looping. Now we want our battery status to go up and fill up and then go all the way down to 0 and then fill up again and go down. We want that to be an infinite animation that bounces back and forth. So we're going to have two states for the battery status. One is going to be when the battery's charging and another one is going to be when the battery is discharging. So I'm going to say let action equals charge. This action is going to be either charge or discharge, and actually I can give it a type. So the type I can give it is charge union discharge. That way we can strongly type it. Now initially it's going to be set to charge, so it's going to start charging initially. But we won't be able to give this variable action any other values other than charge or discharge because that's how I typed it here. TypeScript for the win. Okay, update width. Let's get back here. Now if we are charging, oh, by the way, if I say equals here, you'll see that we only have two options. Again, TypeScript is helping us out here so we don't mess up. So if the action is charging, we're going to execute some logic here. Otherwise, that means we are currently discharging. We're going to execute some other logic. And what we want to do is calculate the current width of that filler item, that filler label in the middle. So how do we get the current width? Well, let's create a new variable called curWidth. That's going to keep track of our current width, and that's going to be a number, and we're going to start off at 0. Now we also need to know the full width, and that's going to be a constant because that's not going to change. That's always going to be the same. The full width is going to be a number, and it's going to be 170. Remember, we created that right here. That's the full width that the filler can be. Anyway, so that's going to be set in code here as well. It's going to be 170. We could actually grab that when we load the page from the target, but I'm just going to set a variable here as well. Okay, so let's give it some logic here. Now, remember, requestAnimationFrame is going to happen very quickly. It's going to keep happening and it's going to keep triggering this updateWidth function every 16 milliseconds or thereabouts. Why 16? Well, because we're operating at 60 frames per second on the device, and there's 1000 milliseconds in a second. So 1000 divided by 60 is around 16.666. But we don't care about that here. All we need to know is that updateWidth will be triggered about once every 60 milliseconds. So we're going to keep updating the current width here, and we're going to keep adding 1 to it. Now, the more you add, the quicker that battery status will go. So if we add 5, it'll go 5 times as fast as if we add 1. So we're going to keep adding to the current width when the action is charging. So when that battery is charging, it's going to keep moving to the right. But if current width reaches full width, so greater or equal to, then full width, then we're going to switch the action and we're going to set it to be discharge. So at that point, when it reaches the end, it's fully charged, it's going to start discharging. And that's when we're going to hit the else case. All right, so in else case, we're going to update the current width and we're going to say current width minus equals 1. We're going to keep decrementing it. But if current width reaches 0, when it's fully discharged, we're going to switch the action again to charge this time. So we're going to fill it up now. There's our basic logic there. Now, what do we do with this current width? We're not actually updating the target. Well, we need to do that. So we have these target and inner and outer over here. Why do we need all that? Well, we need to grab these and actually we need to put them out here so we can access them inside our updateWidth function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring them out here and let's say let target, it's going to be of type view, then let outer, that's going to be of type view as well, and let inner, which is going to be of type, you guessed it, type view. So now I'm just going to grab these items from the page, these views from the page, and set them up to be these variables so I can access them now in our updateWidth function. Okay, once we're here, I'm going to say target, and I'm going to set the width of the target directly. Remember, target is that filler label, and the width is going to be the current width, whatever we've set it to be. Great. When I save this, you'll see that, well, nothing seems to happen, but actually something did happen. requestAnimationFrame got called and then this function got called, and then the width was updated, but that only happened once. In order for this to keep updating, you need to keep calling requestAnimationFrame. requestAnimationFrame is actually meant to be recursive. So what we're going to do is call this function right here again. I'm going to copy this code and paste it inside of our update function. So we're going to reset requestAnimationFrame ID, call requestAnimationFrame again, and pass in this function, calling it recursively over and over and over and over again. When I save that, and when I press go, you'll see that our animation starts to kick off and the battery goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Excellent. Does pause work yet? No, because we didn't hook it up yet. So we're going to do two more things. One is we're going to handle the color updates so that the color changes. And then we're going to make this animation pausable so we can pause and resume. How do we update the color? Well, let's create some starting and ending colors at the top here. I'm going to create a constant color1. That's going to be new color. By the way, color is a module from NativeScript right there. I've imported it. And this constructor takes in a known color. Luckily for us, we can just pass in red. So that's going to be the starting color. And then the ending color is going to be color2. That's going to be green. Okay, so now we have those two colors, the starting color and the ending color. We need to set the target background color to the color based on the current position of the width of that filler, right? So how do we get that? Well, we can calculate it. We need to get the RGB values. So I'm going to say const R. This is going to be the new red. I'm just going to say red. We're going to take the first color, and each color has RGB values already in it. So if I say dot here, you'll see we have R, G, and B. And we need to grab the components of that color. So I'm going to grab the red because we are trying to calculate the new red here based on the position. I'm going to add color2 red minus color1 red times the current width divided by full width. This formula is going to give us the red color, or the red portion of the entire color at that position in time. Now we just need to use the same kind of formula to get the green and blue values. So I'm going to say green, and then that's going to be color1.g, and then color2.g minus color1.g times current width divided by full width. And finally, we're going to need to get blue. So color1.b, color2.b minus color1.b times current width divided by full width. From these three components that are calculated based on where we are in time, we can create a brand new color. So I'm going to say const cur color equals new color. And this constructor actually not only takes in the well-known color like red, green, and blue, but we can pass in individual values. So right here, this override says we can pass in alpha, red, green, and blue. Alpha will be 255. We always want it to be fully visible. Alpha basically is the transparency. And then we say red, green, and blue. This will build up a new color, which is going to be the current color. And we can say target.background color equals current color. Okay, now when I save that, we can test out the color situation. So I'm going to say go here, and it starts out at red and then moves down to green and then moves back to red. And that's the color animation. Now we can also do the same thing with the outer battery. That's the border that surrounds the filler. And that's pretty easy to do. We already have inner and outer views. All we need to do is just say inner.background color equals current color, and outer background color equals current color. When I save that, you'll see the whole battery now update in color. That's color updating. There's only one more thing left to do, and that's to implement this pause button. We're going to use the same API that was implemented with the requestAnimationFrame, and this one's called cancel animation frame. So I'm going to say cancel animation frame, but I need to pass in that RAF ID. When I save this and restart, we can press go here and then pause and then go again and then pause and then go again and then pause. So you can see that pausing is actually working. And the reason that works so well is because these values The target width and the color are actually set by the update function. And whenever you pause it, they'll just remain there wherever they were last. That's pretty much how pause works. How do you like the new Request Animation API? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you're not subscribed yet, consider subscribing to the channel. And I will see you all in the next video. Happy native scripting. Give me back my frames. Please don't take them. They're not for you. See ya.